Welcome to the Love Pod, where inspiration, vision, and real connection come alive. Wherever you are, you belong here. Hello, hello, and welcome to the Love Pod, everyone. I'm Julia.
And I am Nathaniel.
And today we are so honored to be joined by Dr. Dan Sneider, a compassionate therapist, parent, and guide whose work has helped countless couples rediscover intimacy, connection, and emotional safety in their relationships. He is based in Asheville, North Carolina, and Dan brings over 15 years of experience as a couples and individual therapist, teaching proven tools that help people move from conflict to closeness and from disconnection to secure attachment. His signature 12-week disconnection to secure attachment his program, The Intimacy Shift, a blueprint for moving from conflict to lasting connection, has supported hundreds of relationships in transforming struggle into deep understanding and love. We are so honored to have you here with us today and explore how our relationships mirror our healing and how through conscious awareness, compassion, and courage, we can create relationships that truly thrive in our lives. Welcome to the Love Pod, Dan.
Welcome, Dr. Dan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And I love in your intro music, I just have to say there's like that baby crying sound, which the first time I heard it, I was like looking around. My kids are out of the baby phase, but you hear that sound and just it catches you. So yeah, very grateful to be here.
Well, we're grateful to have you. And that's actually our little daughter who's giggling in the intro video. And you know what? She's the inspiration behind all that we do.
Yeah, totally. That was actually from a trip that we did to visit some wonderful friends in Sedona, and I was on a double seat swing with her, and I was taking a video because I just had to send that video to Julia. And she loves movement. She loves to play. She loves to grow. I understand you're a father of two boys, Dr.
Mm,
Dan.
that's
Let's
right.
let's let's jump into the parenting journey and talk about what you do and how you help people retain that intimacy. I think this is, for Julie and I, this has been a big topic of conversation. It hasn't been the easiest thing because there's so much to do. The nature of the game of life changes.
Oh
So,
yeah, it's such an
yeah.
important topic, and that's why I'm really grateful that we're both able to be on with him today too, because it's such a key area of everyone's life, whether it's an intimate relationship or not, or whether it's between a child and a parent, a mother or father. It's like our relationships are so important, and to especially your work, Dan, that's rooted in fostering and deepening that connection, presence and authenticity is just so important. So yeah, I would love to hear more about your journey.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, happy to share. So, like you said, I have two children. They're 8 and 5 years old right now, two boys with tons of energy. And I love that about them. And also, when you have children, going from zero to one being the biggest change in life. And that's what I hear across the board. That was true in our family and true from other people that, adding a second or third or more kids from that, it's not quite the same change as going from zero to one. And that's where a lot of this work started for me was I had been working in schools. I was a school social worker for a long time. I was a residential treatment center counselor working with kids. But when we had that first child, I started doing private practice therapy in not my spare time, but in evenings, weekend time, and really working with couples because in my relationship, there was a big change, a big shift, becoming parents, changes in our bodies, changes to our sleep schedule, changes to how we talked to each other and about each other. And I became really fascinated with working with couples and learning, how to maintain the kind of connection that I knew I wanted, but had not learned how to do in school and did not have the model for growing up. So yeah, between then and now, I've worked with so many couples, gone to trainings, and really worked on this system that you mentioned as part of my program, the intimacy shift. That's why I called it that. There are many different kinds of shifts that can happen to an intimate relationship, but that going from no children to then having children being a big one that I focus on. So I'm excited to share with your audience all about that today.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think it's one of the most core parts of family, right? Because I feel like so many parents that I have observed too, they focus all their attention on children and during those phases, and then they lose that connection between themselves, and then that can lead to models for the children that are in that family. They don't know how to have that intimacy as well, and so like you said, it was sparked for you, like it's something that you're interested in. What have you learned so far, and how are you helping couples today?
Absolutely. So, a big part of what I learned personally was about my own attachment style and how that impacted the relationship. So, before children and then after, what really happened for me was a lot of my bad habits became magnified. I noticed that I was isolating myself more, I was building resentment towards my partner, and I was doing a lot of that without talking about it, without knowing how to talk about it, without feeling safe to talk about it. So a lot of my really avoidant traits came out with attachment style. There's some nuance there, but in general, we can be anxiously attached, which is like that nervous energy. I'm chasing the other person, wanting to check in, get updates, kind of doubting the relationship. And then there's avoidant energy, which is what I was struggling with, which was pulling inward, pulling away, and it caused a lot of damage in the relationship. And so a big learning for me was, how can I have a tool or a framework, some way to feel more comfortable, to share with my partner, to connect with them, to come into that middle space where we could be together. And so one of the things that I really love from John and Julie Gottman's work, and if any of your listeners haven't read one of their amazing books or visited their website, one of the things that they talk a lot about is couples having what they term state of the union conversations. But really, it's putting on the calendar, setting a time where regularly the two people are going to sit down and talk. And just that small change made a huge difference for me because now I knew, okay, at this day and time, we are going to come together, and the expectation is we're going to talk. I can't really avoid it, it's on the calendar. And I started to look forward to those conversations as they went better, and we learned, well, what do we each want to bring to the table? How are we going to feel at the end of the conversation? If we're feeling better, then I'm looking forward to the next one. So that's a key thing that I help couples with is really establishing a safe place to be able to talk to each other about the relationship rather than either catching the other person at a bad time or avoiding talking entirely.
Hmm.
So that's a little bit of what I'll bring to the work for parents who, know that time is at a premium, right? That's this finite resource. And then when we have kids, so much time and energy is going into them, rightly so.
Hmm. Hmm.
I really love that. I think communication is actually truly so important. And, it's funny because it's not inherently natural for everyone. And especially when kids come into the picture, like the challenges can become more magnified, as you mentioned. And it's like, I think it's important to have that time away from the children so that you can be focused and also give your partner the attention and presence that they need. And it's really nice because then you get to connect in a way where you're focused and you're giving, your partner the attention. And I know, especially for me, like it's been challenging because when my daughter's around, my brain is just there. Like it's really hard for me to, be totally present with Nathaniel, or like I just feel a lot of the time that I'm on like fight or flight sometimes. Just as a mama, this is my own experience. And so it's hard for me to go deep in conversation with you. And we do talk about, oh, we'll talk about it later, we'll talk about it later when we have time, or when Luciana is sleeping or whatever. But to actually go ahead and take that extra step and book a time in the calendar, and I think that's just really um it's a critical step, because then you can, like you said, that, okay, at this time, me and my partner, we're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation. And then you can really express how you're feeling, at least without having that background distraction.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can relate to you too with the avoidant patterns. I feel like for me, like I'll go and spend a lot of time with myself, and if my, my needs aren't being met, I'll just kind of go and try to maybe find other ways of coping with that. Like I'll go for long walks or whatnot and not feel like I'm being heard. So I think that scheduling that time is really important. And I was thinking about both of those attachment patterns that you talked about, and they seem to both be rooted in some form of fear, like whether it's anxiety or avoidance. And so I'd imagine having that like scheduled time that is focused. Like you said, it was a relief to you. So it's like, that it's almost like one of those things, like, reminds me of procrastination. Like, you have to do something and you put it off because of the perception of the discomfort of it. But when you finally do it, you're like, oh, that wasn't that hard. And you face that feeling. I would imagine this kind of a similar experience that people have who take that step. Dan, do you want to kind of go more into that process, or yeah, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I'd love to, and bringing fear into the conversation. What a powerful emotion that we all have experienced and understand. And one of the most impactful things I remember when I was a teenager, I started going to therapy, and one of the things my therapist said was, underneath anger is hurt, right? Often underneath fear is hurt or fear of being hurt. And such a core part of our human experience is wanting to connect, wanting to belong. But we've all been hurt in life and in relationships. And because of that hurt, sometimes we will withdraw and isolate. Sometimes we will then be more anxious and more maybe needy, more enmeshed with our partner. But you're right, it does a lot of the time come from a place of fear, or self-doubt. Another big inspiration for me in the work that I do is Dr. Sue Johnson's work from Emotionally Focused Therapy. So as you can tell, I'm a reader, right? So Dr. Sue Johnson has another wonderful book called Hold Me Tight.
I've heard of
And
it.
yeah, it's a wonderful read for couples and has a number of really good exercises that they can do together. And what she describes is this infinite cycle of conflict that couples will get in, where one person will feel insecure or fearful about something in the relationship or about the connection. But like you said, coming from a place of fear, and they will have feelings and thoughts and then actions because of that trigger, which will then trigger the other person who will have their own feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. And we go around and around because of this fear that we're having and these hurt spots that we have. I have hurt spots, and my partner will say or do something that pokes at a hurt spot. My reaction in turn, or my lashing out, can poke at their hurt spot. And the way out of that cycle that she describes is being vulnerable about our need for connection, right?
Hmm.
The way through fear is towards connection, towards closeness. Takes bravery to do that, takes a lot of safety and trust in the relationship,
Hmm.
which I want for us to talk about more also, because how do we build that safety and trust so that we can be brave, not fearful, and move towards the person?
Hmm.
No, I very much appreciated kind of some of your coping skills, right? Taking long walks, taking time to yourself, which are very good things in the right amount of time. But we want to be able to build that relationship where together we can work through things. If I'm always trying to solve my problems by myself, then we're going to move towards disconnection
Mm.
instead of connection.
Hmm.
And it takes some work to get there. So from that fear to healthy vulnerability is a really great frame for our conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
totally.
love that. Thanks for answering, Dr. Dan. And before we dive more into that safety and trust aspect, I would just like to talk a little bit more about attachment theory because it can sound a little academic to some, but it's so deeply human and natural to have it. And so I'm curious how our listeners or how couples can recognize more of their attachment patterns and what are some practical ways that they can cultivate secure attachment and healthy attachment styles in their everyday lives.
Yeah, no, thanks for bringing me back down from definitions, and we want to give examples. We want people to be able to really like relate to these
Exactly.
experiences. Yeah. So attachment really starts, from the earliest phases of life, right? The way that mamas carry their babies, the way that infants are held and loved on, the way that our needs are met, all influence the way that we feel safe and connected to people in the world. So if any person out there listening thinks about their early experiences, you know, were they loved and held and were their needs met? And how that happened influences the way that they show up then in relationships throughout their life. Now, there's that can change over time. It's not like fixed forever. But in general, that's how it forms. So if there was a home, like mine, so in my home growing up, my mom was very loving and caring for my needs. My dad was very distant, very avoidant. There was a lot of emotional abuse that took place in the home and between the two of them. And that's where, like I mentioned, I had these avoidant traits later in life in my relationships. Because growing up, even though I was deeply loved and cared for and my basic needs were met, it was a very unpredictable environment. And so I had to do a lot of taking care of my own emotions and withdrawing, right? I moved my bedroom to the other side of the house. I spent a lot of time in my room. And for better or for worse, that was how I learned to survive that, chaotic, unsafe home environment for me. And then in my adult relationship, like I mentioned, then we have our first kid, life changes, right? Our relationship changes. And so I go back to the pattern that I know. How do I find safety when I can't rely on safety around me? Is I withdrew, I went inward. And like I said, there was damage caused by that. There was hurt. And so to rebuild that trust and safety took time and took effort. And even as a therapist myself, right? We went to couples counseling, we read books, and we really made a lot of effort because we knew the kind of relationship that we wanted. Um, but it didn't happen automatically. It didn't happen by accident. A big thing that I want to normalize for people is that there are skills, there are tools that we can apply and learn that can make things better.
Hmm.
So even if you do have that avoidant tendency, like I did, or if you trend more towards anxiety, where you're the kind of person that maybe is, um, checking in with their partner 50 times a day. Where are you? What did you do? I miss you. I want to be closer to you. That's not bad, but sometimes it gets to be overwhelming for the relationship, for the other person. And it's more about I feel activated than I feel safe and loving. And so that's kind of the other end of the spectrum. And, there's work that both people can do to come more into healthy connection.
Hmm. Yeah, wonderful. I think that sounds like a perfect segue in terms of, talking about establishing trust and intimacy, Dr. Dan. So like maybe you could walk us through how you establish that with couples that you first meet and I'm sure our listeners are would love to hear that as well, because I think this is permeates all of society. I've heard a lot that family is the backbone of our society. So even if families grow and change, like couples can, find new relationships, all that, but there's still those core relationships. And intimacy doesn't just have to be, I would imagine relegated just to like sexual partnerships. It's intimacy of like friendships and intimacy maybe with parents and all that. Like I feel like there's a yearning for that in our species right now because there is so much an epidemic of disconnection,
Oh,
right? Even though we're more connected intellectually through devices and stuff, I feel like people are yearning for those emotional connections. So,
even though conflict is inevitable in every relationship, disconnection doesn't have to be.
Yeah, yeah, well said. And so a lot of times I'll explore emotional intimacy as one category, building trust, and then physical intimacy, right? That sexual relationship, passion, romance, touch. Um, they're similar, but not exactly the same, right? And so with building emotional intimacy, that trust building, that safety. That first step, like I mentioned, that I'll talk about with couples is establishing, a time and place where we're going to be working on things. It could be partially like when we're in therapy sessions. If we're in couples counseling, then okay, that's the time and place where we're safe to talk. But we also want a time when it's just the two of us and we're at home and we're just together working on this. And so if both people agree, yes, we do want to build closeness and we can establish that time and space, that's step one. But then we want to build from there. So just showing up to that space is going to put some coins in the trust piggy bank. That's another kind of Dr. Danism that I'll share often is, trust isn't built with one big swing, one big action.
Hmm.
It's putting coins consistently in that piggy bank over time. And so agreeing to meet and then actually showing up and meeting is a big deal for couples. Because how often in our lives have we said, oh, yeah, I'll get around to that. I'll do that tomorrow. And we don't follow through on it. That takes, coins out of that piggy bank. It may not be a huge deal, that one thing, but consistency and showing up is a core part of trust building. So if we can agree to having those conversations and then showing up to do them, we're on the right track already. So emotional intimacy there, and then building physical intimacy at the same time. So once we do sit down, okay, we're going to talk about things. Right away, I want couples to get into their bodies and either hold hands, make eye contact, even just taking a deep breath together. My favorite things in the whole world is when I pause for a moment to take a big, deep breath. I do it with my kids often. They will tell you and roll their eyes about it, but it gets us in our bodies and slows us down. And
Hmm.
adults need that just as much as kids. So that's, once we're sitting down together, let's get in our bodies and build that physical intimacy. We're not having sex. It's not that kind of physical intimacy, but it's a building block and it helps us to feel, just that animal connection of we're in this together. Our breathing is aligned. We can feel our bodies slowing down. So that's, just those first couple steps. We're already, major progress towards trust and connection.
I really love that, Dr. Dan. And I think, what comes to mind as you're saying, letting our bodies slow down. Um, it sounds a lot like actually lowering into different brain states, like shifting from maybe high beta to a lower beta or even an alpha together. And like really, and there's a lot of talk nowadays about coherence, right? And the more that we can have that heart mind coherence, and if we're actually making conscious efforts to to attune our bodies, like there's an intelligence that our bodies have, and we're so conditioned in our society beyond like run and go and next thing. So I love your approach about really just simplifying that, taking a breath together, but actually attuning to the body. We talk a lot about um uh yeah, I'll just end it there instead of going what we talk a lot about. I think it's really important. Maybe can you elaborate a little bit more on that and maybe talk about how to understand, because I've heard a lot of talk and I'm interested from your perspective of like people are different, we view things differently, we give different meanings to things. There's a lot of talk nowadays about like human design, the gene keys. People maybe are using the lenses of astrology to kind of like this, and we have different personality types, but at the end of the day we're all very similar in that we have the same basic needs, but maybe they're met in different ways. How do you approach that as a therapist, and kind of taking that maybe complexity that people are coming into your meeting rooms with all these ideas about who they are and who their partner is, and it sounds like you have a gift and just bringing things right down to that simplicity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about parenting, we've talked about adult relationships, and as much as possible, I try to see just similarities, right? Human relationships, animal relationships. And so we can absolutely get maybe not lost, but we can go deep into all of those areas that you mentioned. And whether it's astrology or it's mindfulness or therapy approaches, attachment, right? All of those things are important and they're different lenses, but you're right. I do want things to feel more simple and then we can layer on top. So, um, breath work, for example, taking those deep breaths. I try to practice what I preach, but I'm as guilty as any other parent that I will talk at my kids more than is helpful, right? I'm using a lot of words. I'm telling them, take a deep breath. Let's take a deep breath. When really, if I stop talking and I just so much more powerful than me telling them to take a deep breath. So, I really encourage people to let's start with those simple practices. Showing up when we say we're going to, holding hands, taking that deep breath first, and then we can layer on top of that whatever else we need to. Um, I was in a session yesterday, and I was giving an example, but I was saying, in most relationships, there's one person who more often is gonna grab a glass of water, set that glass down somewhere, forgot that they put it there, grab another glass, and sooner or later there's, six or seven glasses throughout the house. Their partner is the one who's often seeing these glasses and then putting them all away. And those two people marry each other, right? It's not very often that that's two people that are both leaving glass. Yeah, there's some finger pointing
Yeah,
happening.
you're the guy
That's
that
funny
leaves the
because
glass.
I clean up a lot after
I was thinking you're that guy.
that cleans up
Yeah,
after you.
No, leaves the mess.
exactly,
Maybe.
exactly. And
Got
so
some
we
blinders
are
going on
very
here.
different people. Yeah, yeah, of course. And we fall in love and we love those differences, particularly at first. Oh, you're not like me. We're so different. This is exciting. And then over time, that can become annoying. Resentment can get built up, and we get caught in this thing about partner that's not really core to who they are, but we can get lost in it. And so simplifying things, coming together for, again, I said that I would show up and I did. Now we're holding hands and we're breathing together. And from there, it's much easier than to talk about like, hey, let's make sure that we're cleaning up, around the house. How can I help you with that? What do you need
Mm.
from me? That conversation goes completely differently once we have slowed down and really co-regulated. That's that fancy word for, our breathing and our heartbeat and our mood is aligned rather than, high energy and stress. Now we're down here and calm. And so, yeah, I do try to bring things there first because whatever else has happened in the relationship, that's, an example about like, picking up water glasses around the house.
Mhm.
But there are so many other things that couples are dealing with. And it can be everything from there may have been infidelity in the relationship. There may be a family member who's sick or needing a lot of support. There could be financial worries, job loss. There could be identity struggles, right? We've talked about parenting a lot. That identity shift into parenting creates major change in the relationship. And so, yeah, we can talk about all those things, but if we just try to dive into it without the basic, fundamental trust building first, it's not likely to go well.
Mm.
Yeah, I just want to add a couple things to that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's really important too to acknowledge where we're at and having compassion and gratitude because, life can get so challenging at times that if we just kind of just take a deep breath, like you say, and acknowledge that we are exactly where we're meant to be, and no matter how hard or challenging the situation seems at the moment, like we're going to get through it and we're going to find a way. And, I love that you lead by example, the example you gave of like not just telling your son to take a deep breath, but doing it with him. Leading by example is so important because especially when children are so young, you and I are learning from our 21-month young, they are like sponges. They will do what we do and what we say is not as relevant. And I really love what you said too, about approaching your partner and saying, hey, like I understand and I see this is going on. How can I support you through this rather than judging or trying to control if you see something you don't like? Um, Another thing I wanted to mention is I really appreciate how, with all the experience that you've gone through on your personal journey, that you're committed now to helping others, strengthen and deepen their own relationships, and through your service with your, therapy and all this. I think that's really beautiful that you're wanting to help others around you. Because these are important relationships in our life. And the more that we can, strengthen them and heal them with compassion and gratitude, that I think the happier we'll be in our own lives. And I just wanted to add one extra point, because when you spoke about like this embodiment aspect of just at the beginning of a conversation, tuning in, aligning the heart coherence as well. I just have in my mind, like, even if the conversation doesn't go anywhere, I think it's more important at least to like get on that same page and practice that piece of taking deep breaths together, or just harmonizing your energies and your frequencies. And that will be a huge, big step into eventually having a more aligned conversation with your partner. Um,
Hmm.
if you didn't want to add anything, I just wanted to ask if he would like to talk about his signature 12-week program, the intimacy shift.
Yeah, I absolutely would. And um, so many of the couples that I work with, like we've been talking about, have had shifts in their relationship. It could be going into parenting, but there, like I said, there are many other things. And so many of the couples that I work with, particularly with their physical intimacy, have seen challenges, obstacles, consequences to shifts in their emotional intimacy. These things go together, right? So if we are not getting along, we're not seeing eye to eye on things, we're feeling stressed, there's very likely an impact on physical intimacy and sex. And so a big part of the program that I've put together is how to have both things working together. So we've talked mainly about building trust, connection, having a framework for talking about our relationship. And in my 12-week program, there's a major tie-in with the physical intimacy component. Because in a romantic relationship, we want to be physically connected. We want to have sex that feels close and passionate and pleasurable. If we've been together for, 5 years, 15, 20 years, that relationship with our bodies has changed significantly. So the tools that I teach in the program connect all of those pieces and help couples who are struggling in that area. And it's in these steps and stages, like I've laid out. I want there to be a framework for this and also skills. It's not just talking about the problem. We really want behavioral change, things that we're going to implement and do to build from disconnection, not having sex maybe, or not having the kind of sex that we want to, into a more connected place.
Mm.
So at my website, theintimacyshift.com, if your listeners put their email, they're going to get from me a free PDF guide that has my 6 steps to having successful conversations about intimacy or about anything in their relationship that they're struggling to talk about. And that's the first part of my 12-week program. So they're getting a glimpse into what that program will look like. And that 12-week program, it's starting this January, so just in a couple months. We're already in November, so just in January. And then I run that 12-week program every year in January, starting in April or starting in September. And it's not a, press play kind of program. I do have video recordings and tools, but a lot of it is live with me so that anybody in the program can ask me questions. They can have, my situation's a little bit different. Could you speak to this situation? Because I want to be responsive. I know that everybody has something that's particular to their story that they need help with or that they're struggling with. And so I'm available for that throughout the 12 weeks. And at the end of that 12 weeks, you have just a huge transformation. I've seen this with countless couples. My favorite thing in sessions is when couples go from talking to me, looking at me, to turning towards each other, putting, a hand on the other person's shoulder and really connecting with each other. That's just absolutely the best moment for me and something that I've seen a lot through this work.
That's wonderful, Dr. Nan. I imagine the couples who are going through the program together are also um, learning from one another, and there's probably like, is it in a group format or is one-on-one with you?
Yeah, yeah, great question. So it's a group format for this program. I do individual sessions with adults, with couples. I'm licensed in North Carolina, Florida, Colorado, and Illinois. I've moved around a little bit, but I am a licensed clinical social worker and do online sessions with people in those states. This particular program is open to anybody in, the whole world. It's an educational program. It's not therapy, it's a bit different, and it's particularly for people that are really motivated for change to happen
Mm,
quickly. I love doing therapy. I love my therapist. I'm a big advocate for it. And sometimes with therapy, we can get complacent because it's like another appointment. We show up to it. And
mm.
with this signature program I've built, I really want it to be, it's 12 weeks. We start here, we finish here, and we see a lot of change and progress with hard work during that specific time.
No, that's great. And yeah, like what I was saying, I imagine it fosters more of a community feeling too. Other couples in the room, they realizing that, they're not alone. Because I think
Mhm.
so many couples can get isolated in their houses, in their A to B of their life, and feel like, even though there's an awareness that other couples are struggling, like not having anyone to, to share that with, especially as a couple together, that must be really interesting dynamics that can emerge. And it sounds like potentially some relationships can emerge from that too, because 12 weeks is a significant amount of time to share. And I'd imagine get into some deep dives, even though it's not therapy, it is more educational focused.
Absolutely. Yes. We are not alone, right? Some of the examples I've shared today are from my own relationships. I appreciate, you've shared some as well. And yeah, like I said earlier, I didn't have a course in school about how to maintain a relationship through job changes and moving and parenting, right? So everybody can really benefit from learning and practicing and growing this skill of maintaining a juicy, loving relationship. So yeah, let's normalize that and validate it, right? We are not alone in struggling with these things.
And even this work that we're doing, even though it's for us, it's not just for us because the thing is with relationships, they're all mirrors. So the work that we're doing internally will ripple out in our outer world and it will go down and up the generation and heal there as well. And what I think is beautiful is being an example for our future generations because they are the world's future leaders. And so the more we can embody these aspects of ourselves that are like aligned and whole and happy, but also understanding and compassionate and really seeing our partner for who they are and loving them unconditionally, then I think that we're going to be setting beautiful examples for our children and for the future generations.
Yeah, and just thank you, Julia. And to expand on that, you mentioned about not having any of these programs at school. Julia and I talk a lot about this, is why we started an education association, because we feel like, well, we know where the history of education comes from, the industrial era, to really foster, um, obedience and employees and whatnot. So one thing we like to ask our guests, I know we only have a few more minutes with you, Dr. Dan, is what is your higher vision for our world, whether it's through education or seeing flourishing of intimacy between couples and embodying that? What is your vision of the world, and how do you see your place in that world? Your higher vision, I should say.
Mm. Oh, great question. I'm going to be thinking about that for the rest of today, I'm sure. I'll give my answer for now, and then maybe you'll get an email from me later.
Sounds
More
great.
thought. Um, I really do like the idea of ripples. So Julia, thank you for that visual, that um, the impact that I can have, and having trust and faith that those ripples will continue spreading. And so, my main focus, right, starting within the home, is with my kids so that they will see and have a different example than I did for what healthy relationship between caregivers and adults can look like. So that's that ripple, which my main focus, and then outward from there, the work that I do is very much for that higher vision. I think that we can do good in the world in really any profession. This is one that I chose based on my experiences and my strengths and interests. But no matter what your profession is, the way that you show up in the world absolutely causes positive impact.
Mm.
So I try in all of my interactions, whether I'm at a playground with other families or I'm, with friends who have all kinds of different jobs than I do, really normalizing and just like I am now, talking about my struggles, the things I'm working on, the way that I want my relationship to feel. And so that higher vision comes from all of those places. And the only other add-on, I think, for me, just as a man talking about these things, whenever I am with other men, other dads, I not surprisingly, because of the work I do, I will open the conversation up to, how is your relationship going? This is something that's happening in my relationship, and really wanting for more men to be able to talk about their feelings, to be able to ask questions, and to be able to, gain wisdom, knowledge, right, from
Mm,
from our community of other men. So, uh, yeah, that's what I've got for today in terms of my higher vision.
that's wonderful. Thank you for
Beautiful
sharing,
answer.
Dan. We
I
look
love
forward to hearing your contemplations down the
it.
road.
Did you want to add anything else before we close up here?
No, we really appreciate having you on. You've already told us how the guests can reach you, and we will put that in the comment section as well, Dr. Dan.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and wisdom and your lived experience, with such openness and vulnerability and humility. This conversation is a beautiful reminder that intimacy isn't something that we find, but it is something that we cultivate together with intention and, with awareness and moment by moment, we have that compassion and that gratitude. It really helps. So it's not about perfection. We're only human, but it is about, seeking more of that presence and bringing it into our everyday lives. And like Nathaniel mentioned, for everyone listening, we'll have in the show notes how you can explore Dr. Dan's work. And also, please go to his website, theintimacyshift.com, and download his free guide, which is the 6 keys to unlock intimate conversations. And you could also find him on social media at Intimacy Shift. Yeah, until next time, please keep opening your hearts and listening with love. And remember that every relationship is an opportunity to return to connection. Thank you so much.
We have a uh, little farewell from our young daughter Luciana. Thanks for watching. You say ciao ciao.
Bye.
I love you so much.